This is Horror Podcast.
Welcome to This is Horror, a podcast for readers, writers, and creators. I'm Michael David Wilson, and every episode alongside my co-host Bob Pastorella, we chat with the world's best writers and creatives about writing, life lessons, creativity, and much more. Today, Stephen Graham Jones returns to the podcast for his first full-length episode in 6.5 years. And what a reason to do it, because Stephen just released Don't Fear the Reaper, the second book in his Indian Lake trilogy. And in this conversation, we not only speak about the second book, but we do in fact talk about the first book, My Heart is a Chainsaw, which is one of the best novels from 2021. And in addition to that, we talk about a multitude of other topics, including the impact on Stephen when he won the Mark Twain American Voice in Literature Award. But before any of that, it is time for a quick advert break.
From the host of This is Horror Podcast comes a dark thriller of obsession, paranoia, and voyeurism. After relocating to a small coastal town, Brian discovers a hole that gazes into his neighbor's bedroom. Every night she dances and he peeps. Same song, same time, same wild and mesmerizing dance. But soon Brian suspects he's not the only one watching, and she's not the only one being watched. They're watching is The Wicker Man meets Body Double with a splash of Suspiria. They're Watching by Michael David Wilson and Bob Pastorella is available from thisishorror.co.uk, Amazon, and wherever good books are sold.
It was as if the video had unzipped my skin, slunk inside my tapered flesh, and become one with me.
From the creator of This is Horror comes a new nightmare for the digital age, The Girl in the Video by Michael David Wilson. After a teacher receives a weirdly arousing video, his life descends into paranoia and obsession. More videos follow, each containing information no stranger could possibly know. But who's sending them, and what do they want? The answers may destroy everything and everyone he loves. The Girl in the Video is The Ring meets Fatal Attraction for the iPhone generation. Available now in paperback, ebook, and audio.
Okay, with that said, here it is. It is Stephen Graham Jones on This is Horror. Stephen, welcome back to This is Horror Podcast. It has been...
Thank you.
It's been over 6 years, as I was saying when we were talking off air. You know, that is the last time that we did a full conversation with you. There was a little clip on episode 300, and, you know, quite frankly, when I just worked that out, I thought, I hope Stephen's not going to be mad with us. It's like 6 years. Like, what are you doing? You nearly ghost me for over half a decade? The fuck?
Man, it doesn't even feel like that long. It feels like maybe a year and a half, you know? Yeah, I think it's because it's because I listen to y'all sometimes, so that probably, like, I think I'm part of it when I'm not part of it, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're always part of it in our heart. And of course, whenever we talk about prolific writers, it's pretty much you and Josh Malaman who we put right up at the top. So maybe we're just giving you an ego boost because we keep referencing you even though you're not on the call. So you're like, oh yeah, I'm here, I'm part of this. But I mean, what have been the biggest changes for you both personally and professionally in the last 6 years? Which seems like a ridiculous question. Normally,
I
when
know.
I ask someone,
know.
it's not been that long.
I know. Yeah. You know, I guess if I was on here last for Mongrels, then the first book I published after Mongrels was Mapping the Interior, a little novella I did for Ellen Dutlow at Tor.com, which was lucky enough to pull some awards and get into a lot of readers' hands. And because of Mapping the Interior, Ellen Detlow said, "Hey, why don't you write another novella for me?" And that Mapping the Interior took me 4 days. And so I thought, hey, well, I got 4 days. I can steal 4 days. And so I sat down to do that. And 4 weeks later, I had not written a novella. I'd written a novel. And I was like, what is up with me? Don't I know how to write a novella? That was kind of stupid, I thought. So I put that book to the side. That book's coming out next year, actually. And I thought, all right, I'll write a novella. Let's write a novella. And again, 4 weeks later, I had a novel. And that one was The Babysitter Lives, actually, which has already come out. And I put it aside, and I'm like, okay, rule is when you get to 115 pages, you stop. I thought, who cares if the story's done? It's a novella if it's as long as a novella, which is a stupid rule. But I had to do something because I kept going over. And so I wrote this little, like, creepy to me haunted house thing, or haunted presence thing, or something. And got to 115 pages, and I stopped. And I was like, yes, I did it, a novella. But then another line occurred to me that I could tag on to that would open it up into a novel. And so I called my agent and I said, hey, what should I do? Should I leave this a novella and turn it into Ellen? Or should I make it a novel? And she immediately, without even hesitating, she said, make it a novel. They're easier to sell. So I did. I made it a novel, and that was The Only Good Indians. The first part I'd written was the PETA and Lewis section. And I never planned on it being a novel. I planned on it being a novella, which is why it's kind of a weirdly shaped novel, and then and I'm skipping some books too. I think also in 2017 or 2018, I had My Hero come out, my first kind of standalone comic book, and then The Only Good Indians, and after They Only Get Indians, I think I had Memorial Ride. No, I had Night of the Mannequins come out, that novella, right? Yeah, Night of the Mannequins. And that was the novella I finally wrote for Ellen Detlow at tour. After on my fourth try, I guess. I wrote her the novella. I told her I would write her. And it's like Good Indians is a slasher. Night of the Mannequins is slashery fun. And then I did My Heart is a Chainsaw in 21, another slasher, the first of a trilogy. And then I had Earth Divers come out, the monthly comic with IDW. It's just rolling along, and it's a blast to do. I don't see how writers maintain like Cullen Bunn. How does he do as many titles as he does, or Jeff Lemire? Because just one title is so much work. I can't imagine doing more than that. Maybe I'll figure it out once I've had my feet on the ground in the industry for a while. And after Earth Divers, we're pretty much where I am right now. Don't Fear the Reaper is, as we record this, right about to come out. It may have come out by the time we record this. I'm not sure. And I've already written the third one. I turned it in August. It'll be coming out before too awful long. And let's see, I have also sold I Was a Teenage Slasher, another novel, which is coming out before too long. And what else? I guess that's all, man. I don't know. I didn't even count how many books that is, but it's a few in the last 6 years.
Yeah. You're certainly continuing your reputation of being prolific, and this is before we've even mentioned any personal changes, but maybe it's kind of business as usual on the personal front. And I recall you saying before, in terms of a social life, it's like, well, you typically skip that so that you can get on with the writing. I remember when you were at university, you were very disciplined about that, and it's like, look, I'm here to write. That is what I'm doing.
That's pretty much still how I try to be. I do. I mean, of course, we're humans. We're social animals. We have to get out and be among people, or we quit being people, I think. But I feel like the biggest chunk of my socializing comes from book events and conventions and conferences and festivals and stuff, which is great. I love moving among other writers and other readers, and that's great for me. But yeah, left to my own devices, I just stay home and write and read and watch VHS tapes and junk like that,
Yeah. And I mean, you said you wrote a novella in 4 days. You wrote a novel in 4 weeks. I know you've said before you've written short stories in like an afternoon. So, of course, I'm wondering, when you say that, what level of written do you mean? Do you mean purely the first draft, or has it gone through several drafts at that point? And then, let's take the novella then. So you've done that in 4
Yeah.
days. How much more are you then putting in before we get the finished published book?
With mapping the interior, yeah, it took 4 days, and it wasn't even like 4 days of constant work because I was doing a lot. I kept a little log on my website about while writing this, what was I doing, and it's pretty obvious that I was not only writing, but I found that if I only write, I mean, the product is pretty useless. I can write 8 hours in a row, no problem, but only 90 minutes. The first 90 minutes of that is salvageable. The rest of it just have to
Mm,
throw away because it's just me putting random words, not random words, but it's me not doing what I consider good work. But
yeah.
mapping the interior, yeah, it was 4 days to write, and then it was probably a total of like a day and a half of editing. Because I didn't get Ellen gave me some good notes on it, but they weren't like substantive. Like they didn't spin everything a different direction. The ending was in place. Everything was in place. It was just she had a couple of questions like, can you make this scene where it makes a little more sense to me? That kind of stuff. Ellen's really good at that. And
Mm,
yeah, story. If a story, tell you the truth, if a story takes me longer than 2 afternoons, then I generally throw it away because I think it's like pushing a boulder uphill. And writing should not be like that. Or writing's not like that for me, anyways. Writing for me is I'm at the top of a hill and I climb up on a boulder and I ride that boulder down, and it's a big fun time. But if I'm having to push a boulder up a hill, then I might as well do something else. Because if it's not fun, I'm not going to do it. And writing to me is super. It's a fun, crazy ride, and not work. I'm always afraid of turning writing into work or a chore, which I think is why I never have maintained a schedule with writing. I don't like.
mm,
I'm afraid if I told myself be at the desk at the keyboard by 8 a.m. so you can get 4 hours of work done before lunch or whatever. I'm afraid that it would become. I would kind of start to dread that. I'd be like, oh, it's 7:45. I got to get to the keyboard. I don't want writing to be that. I want writing to be an escape
mm,
from responsibilities and all the just from the world. Like I feel like with writing, I'm taking books and building a little fort around myself, and I'm just isolating myself
mm.
with this keyboard, and just it's a ball. I love it, and it's playing with dragons, and playing with dragons is not work. Playing with dragons is wondrous and amazing to me, anyways.
Yeah, yeah. And just because we do really like to get into the writing logistics, so in terms of your writing setup, are you doing that on just like a regular computer? Are you doing that on in a notebook? Like, do you have an internet connection? Are you listening to music?
Mm-hmm.
What's going
No,
on in terms of that?
I'm a big proponent of not ritualizing your writing, which is like I know some writers are like, all right, I'm at my special desk and the cat is over there, the blinds are turned 3/4 this way, I've got my glass of whatever here, and I got that candle going, and I got my lucky pen here, and now I can finally write. But I think when you do that, you're just stalking yourself with excuses to not write. Because at the bus stop,
Yeah.
you're not going to have your cat and your mini blinds and your lamp and all that stuff. And with me, I'm constantly on the road, so all I really tell myself I need is either a pen or a keyboard, either of those two, and I can go to town and get a whole lot done. Generally a laptop on the road, of course. I used to carry my keyboard with me on the road, just this one, and I love it. I can go
Oh,
so fast on
not
this dude.
that
But
that is a keyboard.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I've got two of them, one in my study and one in my office on campus, and I'm thinking about getting a third. But
Yeah.
it's kind of big to pack in a carry-on, so I don't
Right.
do that so much anymore. I can go pretty fast on a little keyboard too, and I like to have music too. I really
Mm.
like to be through loudspeakers. I just blew out a pair of Bose speakers, and I had to get some bigger speakers because I like it really really loud. I like brain meltingly loud is what I
Yeah.
consider good music. And what I do for every novel is before I start writing it, I throw together a really fast playlist, and that playlist is usually about an hour and a half long because that's how good I'm good for with writing. And I only listen to that playlist from song one in that same order when I'm writing that book. And what that does after just a few sessions is condition me such that whenever I hear the opening beats of Journey or Rob Zombie or whoever, or Cher, whoever it is, that immediately, like, I feel a trapdoor open underneath my world, and I fall into the emotional landscape of the novel, and which makes it really weird when I'm done with that novel and I allow myself to then listen to that playlist in the car, my bike, walking the dog, whatever. It's weird because I almost lose my breath because I'm back in the world of that novel when I'm listening to that playlist. It's really weird for me.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I've got a number of albums or soundtracks that I like to
Mm,
put on
mm,
while writing,
mm,
but I mean, unlike you and a number of other people that we've spoken to, I haven't
mm.
been so strict as to say, okay, this is the only one for this story, but I think I'm gonna have to try it out because, I mean, I can just see how it could condition on another level. Like it's almost that
Yeah, yeah.
Pavlovian effect. And
It really, it really does. Although the only thing I've noticed bad about it is I tend to like end with the same song. I always end with one of, well, not always. I tend to end with one of two songs. It's either Johnny Van Zant's Brickyard Road. Johnny Van Zant is Ronnie Van Zant and Donnie Van Zant's little brother, you know, from Skinner and
mm,
38 Special. And Brickyard Road
yeah,
is an amazing song to end a playlist on. But often it's Meatloaf's Objects in the Rearview Mirror because that always breaks my heart in a good way. And it's like 7 minutes long,
yeah,
so I get to end for a long time. But also I have a little like bump out playlist, which let me see if I can pull it up right quick. Um,
yeah, yeah.
which sometimes I get to the end of like my 90-minute play like writing session, but I still have to do like 3 more paragraphs or something like that.
Mm,
And so then I need like 3 or 4 more songs. And so I threw this together. It's only 4 songs. It's Rod Stewart's Young Turks, which I love. Bon Jovi,
mm,
Living on a Prayer, John Mellencamp, Jack and Diane, and Bad Company's Shooting Star. Those are the 4 like bump out songs. If I need just 5 more minutes or 10 more minutes of writing, then I push play on that playlist. And it's weird because I'm getting conditioned where when I hear those 4 songs, I feel like I'm on a downslope and I know I have to end soon. You know?
yeah, yeah. And they're great tracks, but the problem for me,
Mm,
if I was listening to them, because I don't really listen to music with
mm.
lyrics while I'm writing, I'd
Yeah,
just start singing
yeah,
along, and it's like, well, you've just had
yeah,
an awesome rock out,
yeah.
but you haven't actually got any writing done.
That's a danger for sure. That's why I only allow myself to listen to songs while I'm writing that I know super well that I don't have to listen to anymore. If that makes sense, you know.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't listen to like a new album or music I did not
Mm.
know while I was writing because I'm going to be listening to that music and not
Yeah.
using my fingers in the right way. It's got to be stuff that I know, like the Footloose soundtrack. I know that inside out, so I can. That's those songs tend to be part of my playlist as well. And Meatloaf and Cher and Frank Zappa, that kind of
Yeah.
ridiculous stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and
Yeah.
also I have a like before all the events I do, not all the events, but I have a little playlist for before events too that gets me in
Mm.
what I consider a good headspace. I'll read. It's 4 songs. Oh, it's 4 songs as well. That's weird. I guess that means I need 12 minutes of prep time for any event, right?
Right.
um, it's only 2 artists. Look at that. It's the first 2 songs. It's Roseanne Cash, Her 7 Year Ache, and then Blue Moon with Heartache. Both of those books break my heart. Both those songs, I think of them as books. Both of them break my heart, and they both end with ache, don't they? That's weird.
Yeah.
And then it's 2 Earl Thomas Conley songs. He's a country singer. I think his voice was like 90% as good as George Jones's. Nobody Falls Like a Fool and Angel in Disguise. But yeah. So if you ever stumble into a green room before I'm about to go on stage, chances are I've got these in my ear and I'm listening to Roseanne Cash and Earl Thomas Conley.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, talking about you doing events, I watched one that you had a Meet the Author event, which was put on YouTube. And
Mhm,
one of the craziest stories that you read from that really kind of impacted me was this one about a spider's bite. And
yeah.
I don't want to spoil that for anyone because it's so
Mhm,
perfectly done. You can find it on YouTube. I'll
mhm,
put a link
mhm,
in the show notes. But just the way that, you took this physical horror, but then by the end you've turned it into an emotional one, and it's like, holy shit, the fear of what you're talking about there is so much worse than a spider's bite, and the protagonist is wishing that they'd only had a spider's bite by the end. And I
Oh,
I
thank you.
love that. And I think
Thank you.
we've said before, obviously, when it comes to your stories and subverting
Mhm,
expectations, that's what you're the master of, and that's also
mhm,
what you're interested in. You've said you don't want to write
mhm.
something conventional or
Yeah,
predictable.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. Well, I only want to write novels that or stories that I think I can't write, if that makes sense. Like in my
Mm.
conception of like that spider bite story, you're talking about was it hairy legs and all? Because I have two spider bite stories, but
Yeah.
it's the one about the spider in the shoe. Is that the one? Yeah, yeah.
Yes. Yes,
Um,
it is.
like with that story, I wanted to kind of, in my mind, anyways, mix the instinctual terror of a spider in your shoe with like Ursula Le Guin's The Lathe of Heaven, where that's a guy who
Mm.
every time he goes to sleep, he has this power that rewrites the whole world, and he wakes up to a different world over and over and over. And so I thought, how can I mix those two? Because I've always loved Lathe of Heaven. I don't think it gets read enough. And the best thing I could come up with was you wish so hard that the spider was not in your shoe that you successfully wish it gone, but it takes a lot of your reality with it, and you're kind of sad. You
Yeah.
would have rather just took that bite.
Yeah. Yeah.
I do love. I don't want to take the knees out of genre, but I do want to undercut readers' expectations. Like especially slasher readers, slasher fans, because slasher fans know the conventions and the tropes inside out, and and so it's really really hard to get one past them. Because they see things coming, they
Mm.
see it rolling up on the horizon, and they know exactly what's going to happen the next like 3 beats of the story. And so when I mess with slashers, I try to make little gestures that you're seeing the same thing you've always seen coming at you, but then when I can distract them for a moment, I try to change that thing that's coming at them in some way, while still satisfying their desire for an effective slasher, which is a hard balancing act. But luckily, the slasher is such an elastic little genre that it's got like endless variations. It feels like.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, talking about subverting expectations and talking about the slasher genre, we're going to take this moment to announce the winner of the Novel of the Year in the This Is Horror Awards. And listeners may be able to predict, oh, what could it be? It would be very bizarre if the Novel of the Year was not by Stephen Graham Jones. And it's like, I'm just going to award another author mid conversation. No, it is, of course, My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. So and there it is. If you're
Yeah.
watching the video version, he held it up. He's still holding it up, in fact. So, firstly, congratulations on
Thank
that.
you.
And I mean, as a kind of comment along the lines of what we're talking about, this is what one might term a literary slasher, which of course sounds like a kind of contradiction in and of itself. So
Mm-hmm.
you've done it again, and of course the spoiler
Thank
is
you.
that you're gonna do it for 3 books because it's also we've got the
Yeah.
follow up, Don't Fear the
Yeah.
Reaper, and it's
Yeah.
marketed as a trilogy, so
Yeah.
unless you're
Yeah.
yeah, there it is on the video, Don't Fear the Reaper. But
Yeah. Yeah.
unless you are subverting expectations by putting out a 2 book trilogy, then we do assume that there will be a third book in the trilogy too.
Yeah. Although there'd be a heck of a subversion. There's only 2 books in this 3 book cycle. It cracks
Yeah,
me up.
yeah.
But no, I've already written the third one. I turned it in August. So yeah, it's coming out, man. And I now know how Jade's story ends. And I don't know if people are gonna celebrate it or like sacrifice me. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, we hope that you won't be sacrificed, but at the same time, it's a hell of a way for a horror author to go. I mean, does it get better than that, really?
I,
Death
I
via
know, I know.
sacrifice.
I could be like the guy in The Wicker Man, That'd be fun.
That's exactly what I was thinking of. Yeah. I mean, is there a more iconic sacrifice, though, than the sacrifice at the
Yeah.
end of The Wicker Man?
I don't think there is. I think that's as iconic as it gets. I guess the runner up would be Ari Aster's Midsummer, tied up in a bear suit or something.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah. What a modern day classic that is. Midsummer is just
Yeah.
it has got to be one of my favorite films in the
Mhm.
last 10, maybe even 20 years, and it's so
Mhm.
harrowing from the start. I mean, those first 5 minutes when she realizes what's happened to her family and that scream.
Oh, I know.
Holy shit.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's in both in Hereditary and Midsummer, Aster does the same thing where the first sequence that leads up to like the terrible thing, like in Hereditary, it's
Mm,
the head getting knocked off by the utility pole, and in Midsummer, it's the parents being dead. Both of those, it's like a novel is usually like this. Like this is the beginning, and you go up a long, slow incline,
mm,
you reach a tip, and then you go down precipitously to the end. I think Ari Aster stuff works differently. You start out up here with that high scene, that initial sequence, and you're like, you rock back in your heels. You're like, this is just the beginning, But then after that, he takes a long, slow slope down to the end to like the big surprise at the end of Midsummer. And it like I talk about how to keep the readers unbalanced and kind of um, satisfy while also subverting their expectations. I think that's what Astor seems like he's doing. He's saying,
Mhm.
you all know how a novel is traditionally shaped or a story is traditionally shaped. I'm going to turn it exactly backwards and still give you the terror and the fright and the dread, all that stuff.
yeah. Yeah.
But
And
talking sacrifice, what do y'all remember the Sentinel? What is that, from 77, 78?
Wow. I haven't seen
Yeah,
that in long time.
yeah, at
yeah.
the end, if I remember correctly, that woman is like, "Oh, I'm going to be the new Sentinel," and that's a big
Right.
sacrifice to watch the gate of
Mm,
hell or whatever it is for the rest of her life.
Hmm.
Yeah,
yeah.
And
I
that
like
was
that.
based off of
Yeah.
a novel. Jeffrey
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
Convicts or something like that wrote it.
I've never read it. I've only heard about it, but yeah,
Hmm.
I think I've heard about it. Anyways, it's with all. I think I Mandela affect myself on a daily
Yeah.
basis. I don't know what's real anymore. But
It should be a Paperbacks from Hell.
yeah, for sure, man.
Yeah.
Let Valancourt reissue it.
Assuming it exists. we'll
Yeah,
find
yeah.
out.
If we didn't just Mandela ourselves, yeah.
Yeah. If not, then I guess Grady Hendrix has to write it since he's like kind of the
He might.
paperbacks from hell
Yeah.
guy.
He is, man. He reads all that old stuff. He's got it in his head. Yeah.
Hmm.
This isn't
Yeah.
beer. This looks like beer. This is apple juice, man.
Yeah. I mean, it's so
I
good.
was in
This
a
isn't
yeah.
necessarily an alcohol-free podcast. Imagine that. Imagine inviting someone on and being like, right, this is alcohol-free.
I can be like the opposite and say this is vodka,
Yeah.
but it's not. It's
Yeah.
Gatorade.
Yeah. No, I was doing.
Yeah.
I was in the studio. I was in the studio a few weeks ago, maybe 2 or 3 months ago, recording the acknowledgments for Chainsaw and Reaper and Babysitter Lives, and so I'm in that little in the booth, with the headphones and the mic and all that junk, and I do my first little read, and they come through my headphones. The producer from all the way he was in New York City, I was in Colorado, and he says, "Okay, that sounds good, but we're getting a lot of mouth sounds." And I was like, "Well, I do have a mouth. This is probably going to be a continuing problem, And, and then he had the people in the studio bring me a glass of apple juice, and I don't like apple juice, but
Yeah.
I drank it, and something about the chemistry, the pH, I don't really understand it. It made my mouth no longer make mouth sounds. So now I try to drink
Yeah.
apple juice when I do podcasts because I don't smack and sound like a slee stack as much.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I think the tips for having your voice sound good with a lack of mouth sounds are like
Uh,
well, the first one I'm breaking right now. It's like a good idea to not drink caffeine, but also
mm,
we started this at 5:30 a.m., so it
yeah,
is
yeah, man.
imperative that I'm drinking caffeine right now.
Yeah.
No, I've got the
Also,
caffeine going on too.
yeah, yeah. Also, chewing gum beforehand is a good idea. I know that you were doing
Oh,
that.
okay.
I don't know if that was
I was,
deliberate
yeah.
or just a happy,
It
happy
wasn't.
coincidence.
No, well, no. All through high school and I guess junior high and a little bit of college, I dipped. So I always had like Copenhagen in
Mm,
my lip. I got to where I had to get, when I went to sleep, I'd put Copenhagen in my lip just so I could wake up with it. I was that much of a
yeah,
junkie for it. But I finally quit, and the nicotine is a little bit hard to kick, of course. But what was really hard for me
mm,
to kick was that sensation of having something in my lip. And so now I always have
right.
gum in my mouth, and I stick it in my lip, and it just makes me happy. And I realize I don't need the nicotine; I just need something in my lip.
Yeah, yeah. The final tip, and I wonder if this is why apple
Mm,
juice is good, but it's actually a
mm.
good idea to eat an apple beforehand. Um,
Really?
again, Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. Again, another
huh,
thing that
huh.
I have not done for this podcast because it's like, I don't know about you, but I don't wake up at 5 a.m. and think, oh, I want an apple right now. That is not what my body
Yeah,
is
yeah,
craving in
yeah,
any way. But
yeah. Yeah, apples are so complicated. Whenever I see a brown part of an apple, I'm like, that's it. I'm off apples for 6 weeks, because it grosses me out so much. And so, and also I have to cut all my apples. I can't bite into an apple. I guess I could. Like physically, I have teeth and I've got a mouth, so I can physically bite into an apple, but I don't like to because I never know if there's going to be brown underneath. And so that absolutely terrifies me, like so
yeah,
much. So I'm really sure I cut all my apples, but also like my core of my apple is nearly as big as the apple because really I just like the skin. So I love the skin. The inside of the apple doesn't really interest me very much, but I love that skin.
right. Yeah. What about if there's brown bits on a banana? Are you okay with that? Or is it
Oh,
same rules
I'm
apply?
I'm that's like panic. That's but I don't.
Panic.
No, I don't. I don't eat. I've had to stop eating bananas because they are way too dangerous. Like I think they bruise a lot easier,
Yeah.
and I can't tolerate that, so I don't eat bananas anymore.
They have
Also,
like an
but
indoor shelf life of like 2 hours.
oh, I know that's the
You get
truth,
them, they're
man. That's the
green. You
truth.
put them on the counter.
Yeah,
Hey, I'm gonna have a banana maybe tomorrow, and then it's like
yeah,
I better eat them now because they're
yeah,
already starting to turn brown.
for
Yeah.
sure, for sure. But it's I'm not. Hopefully, nobody catches this from me, this weirdness. But also I prefer to eat my potato chips from a tube, like Pringles or Lay's or something, because eating potato chips from a bag, I have such like mental psychological difficulty with that because I never know what kind of chip I'm going to pull out. Is it going to be like a messed up one? Is it going to be folded? Like I can't eat folded chips. Folded chips are right off. I just quit eating chips if I get a folded one. Like I love eating at Chili's because I love their salmon. But when you get chips there, their grease is hot enough in the back that lots of their chips they put in fold, and so they're all like double chips, and that to me is a nightmare because I don't know what's in that fold. That's terrifying to me. So I'm really wimpy I'm really wimpy.
Yeah. I'm imagining if your publicist listens to every conversation that you've done to promote this book, and it's like, right, well, we've really curated the podcast. We've heard that This Is Horror is one of the well-known podcasts for horror fiction, and they're like, the fuck, these guys are just talking about food. What has gone on? This has
Yeah,
really
we're
changed
talking
in the last 6.5 years.
we're talking about dread and terror, man. It just happens
Yeah.
to be fixated on chips for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
And it's a damn good job that I decided, right, we'll just like weave this segment for the awards section into, that episode, because it's like if we'd have just done 20 minutes straight, it's like, well, that was the most bizarre acceptance ever. They announced the award, they then spoke about Ari Aster and followed it up with food. But again, remember Stephen Graham Jones, he subverts your expectations. You think you're going
Yeah.
to accept an award and talk about the book? No, that would be what a conventional author would do. Why the fuck would Stephen do that?
oh man.
But I mean, going back to both of the novels in the trilogy,
Mm.
how did Jade Daniels enter your life?
Um, when I first wrote My Heart is a Chainsaw, it was called Lake Access Only. I wrote it in 2013, and I wrote it coming out of many, many readings of Jeffrey Eugenides' amazing novel, The Virgin Suicides. And that Virgin Suicides is told with a royal first person, a Greek chorus, like a we instead of an I. And it just sings. Like every word of that is so precise and so elegant, and I'm forever in love with that book. I read it enough times that I thought, I can do this, or I wanted to do this anyways. But I thought, what if it wasn't about like boring stuff? What if it was about slashers? That's what I always think. Like, what if
Yeah.
it was interesting? And so I did that. I smuggled that royal first person, that Greek chorus kind of narrator, into a slasher story, and immediately I had Indian Lake and Proof Rock and Terra Nova, and I think I had the Dam. The Dam didn't have a name, and I had Camp Blood, I believe, too. But instead of Jade being at the center of things, there was the we who you think is like the chorus, like the communal voice of the people or something. And then at the
Mm.
end, you realize it's been a little 10-year-old kid in an iron mask, like the mental health cover of Quiet Riot. You know, he's wearing that kind of mask, and he thinks he's a we because he doesn't know who his dad is. He's got like 10 people who could be his dad, and so he that for him makes him feel plural, and so he narrates like that. He was the Jade, I guess, but it wasn't working either. That novel didn't work. That novel depended upon a species of turtle I had made up, and it was kind of a hard sell at the end, you know, to get people to believe in this turtle and this whole like
Yeah.
ecosystem that I had dreamed up. And so I put the book on the shelf for 5 years, I think 5 years, and I wrote a lot of other books in that 5 years, including Mongrels, I guess. And then after Mongrels came out, my agent said, "All right, what's next?" And what I did was I wrote two novels. I wrote a novel called American Neanderthal, which is a science thriller about finding like 100,000-year-old bones in America, which happen to be maybe Neanderthal. That's a title kind of, I guess, gives away. And
Yeah.
I love that novel. I love that novel, but nobody else loved it. I mean, my agent loved it. None of the editors we sent it to loved it. It's get roundly rejected. And then I wrote a novel called Texas is Burning, a crime thriller, big old novel, like 150,000 words. And it kind of is very similar in tone to my novel Not for Nothing. It's set in the same area, and I wrote that novel over and over so many times. And we didn't submit it as wide as we did with American Neanderthal, but it still got rejected by the few people who did see it. So I doubt if it ever gets published. I kind of liked it, but something must be broken about it that I can't see. And I forgot what the question was. What was the question? I was going somewhere.
Oh, I was
Remember the
asking you how Jade Daniels came into your
Oh
life.
yeah, yes. I'm trying to. That's what I'm trying to get to Jade, and so then when American Neanderthal and Texas is Burning had both been like roundly rejected, and I was like casting about, like, well, I guess the world hates me. I don't know what I'm going to do. I picked that novel back up off the shelf, and I was like, you know, this community, this slasher has potential, and so instead of rewriting that novel, I extracted what I thought were the good elements. I had the sheriff. He wasn't named Hardy then, but I pulled him out. I pulled the community and the environment, the setting out, and I told the novel in a completely different way. And I believe in that first version that I tried, Jade styled herself as a journalist, and this book she was writing on the murders at Indian Lake was going to be her ticket out of there, you know, her ticket to the world. And it was, I thought it was fun, but it used to be in three parts then. Like Jade told the first third of it, and Sheriff Hardy told the second third, and Letha told the third third, which I thought was really fun. But everyone I gave that novel to, they gave it back and they said, yeah, it's okay. But everybody said we were really sad when we had to go to the second part and leave Jade. And
Right.
it was weird because I didn't think that, I thought she was just a delivery vehicle for the story. But everybody who read it told me, no, she's the beating heart of this world. And so then I rewrote it a few more times, like not just like touch ups, like complete overhaul, like start a new file kind of stuff. And I mean, I think My Heart's a Chainsaw probably comes to 120,000 words. I bet I wrote easily 750,000 words to get that story down as it needed to be done. And then so Jade started to get her own story, and so with Jade, she appeared initially as a tool, just a device to, like a funnel. I could pour pieces of the setup of this world in through. But then, due to my first readers, she actually became central, and then the driving force, and then the emotional core. And so I'm lucky. Like, this is, I mean, hopefully everyone out there listening to this knows, but listen to your first readers, you know. And you don't have to like take what they say as prescription, but if they say we were really sad when they left this character, then listen and ask yourself, what can I do to make them not really sad, you know? And it turns out with My Heart is a Chainsaw, it was stay with Jade.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, of course, with the follow-up, you know, we, of course, have Jade in Don't Fear the Reaper, but we do get some sections with other perspectives. So, I mean, after you'd got the feedback for My Heart is a Chainsaw, were you reluctant? Like, oh, God, I'm deviating from Jade again. Are we going to have a repeat?
Yeah. No, that I definitely had that uncertainty. But
Mm,
as I was saying, I think with a project with a novel, you always have to wade into uncertain waters, you know? And so I knew that I couldn't do the thing that people were expecting me to do, which was put the spotlight on Jade the whole time, like it was in the first book in Chainsaw. I knew I needed to have that spotlight shine on more aspects of the story in the world. And also, I wanted to use the switching point of view trick, or, jumping heads trick that is used in Don't Fear the Reaper. I wanted to use that kind of a setup for book three too, um, as a way to keep the reader on their heels a little bit.
yeah, yeah. No, that makes sense. And I mean, of course, with both of them as well, you're experimenting with form and
Mm-hmm.
deconstructing and dissecting the slasher. And
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
I think anyone who's been reading you for well, who's really read any other books by you is going to know that
mm-hmm.
that's kind of part of what you do. And I,
Yeah, yeah.
I find it kind of funny as well that you wrote The Last Final Girl, what must be like about 10 years ago now. And for some reason, when when you
Mm-hmm.
wrote that as well, like probably just my brain being dumb, I thought, oh, well, is that going to be the last final girl that Stephen writes about? And at this point, it's like, I think even if you were to say that, it's like you're just going to be
Mm-hmm.
writing about final girls forever. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
this,
yeah. I
this
think
is,
so. Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah. No, I'm like Motley Crue. I'm like, this is my last tour ever until next year.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, I mean, if it sells the
Yeah,
books or the
yeah,
concert
yeah,
tickets, you got to
yeah,
do
yeah.
what you got to
You got
do.
to do it, man. You got to do it.
Yeah.
But that question you asked, I hadn't thought about it this way, but I think you're right. I probably will always be doing some version of a final girl or a survivor girl. I think they're pretty essential to horror. But the werewolf is my favorite creature, my favorite horror creature. I
Mm,
don't consider slashers creatures. I consider them like spirits of vengeance. But I've only done one werewolf novel. Mongrels was initially supposed to be 3 books. I had it set as a trilogy.
right.
And I've got the next two mapped out. Not mapped out. I've got like a page of what happens in each of them.
Right.
That I initially pitched to William Morrow, who did Mongrels. But when I pitched that to them, they were like, "Yeah, this sounds pretty cool, but we don't want you to be the werewolf guy. So give us something different." And so then I pitched what eventually became My Heart Is a Chainsaw to them, and they said not interested. And so then I landed somewhere else, and completely happy,
Right.
of course. But that I wonder if I'll write any more werewolf novels. I've tried twice since then to write a werewolf novel, which is really kind of a rewrite of a werewolf novel I wrote in 1999, and it hasn't come together. Like, I can tell in the first 10 pages that something with the conflict is going awry, and so I kind of kill
Mm,
it in utero, so I don't get like 80 pages in and feel like I'm pushing that boulder up the hill.
yeah.
But hopefully I'll write another werewolf novel, and I want to write a vampire novel too. I've written a whole
Yeah.
lot of vampire stories, but I've got some possibilities with a vampire novel that I think could work. The problem is, it's not a problem. It's like a wonderful time we're living in, but there are so many good vampire novels. and
Mm,
and so I have to ask myself, how can I like contribute to this conversation in a meaningful way? Because I don't want to do the same thing over and over. Like, as far as I'm concerned, Christopher Buehlman's The Lesser Dead. I just don't know how I could do better than that. That book blows me away every time I look at it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just as far as vampires go. Um, but I do have some ideas, and they're the same kind of ideas I had for Mongrels, which is basically just a list of, like with Mongrels, I had this list. When I do werewolves, they're going to be like this and not like this. And so I've got a list like that now, which is quite sprawling with vampires. When I do them, they're going to be like this and
mm,
not like this. And I have some different ideas about vampire, not genesis, but biology, anyways, that could be productive. We'll see. We'll see if anything comes out of it. Who knows?
yeah. Yeah. And I recall, you saying that pretty much your starting point
Mm.
for any, I guess, archetype is writing what you won't write. It's like, here's the list of things that it can't be or it can't contain. And then it's almost like, yeah, that cliche about when you strip everything away, the truth is what remains, and the
Yeah,
story is what
yeah.
remains.
That's a great way to think about it, to case it. Yeah, like, and to tell you the truth, I mean, that's not my idea. Like, it's Ellen Datlow. Whenever she asked me for like
Mm.
with I wrote a story for her doll collection. I remember many years ago, her doll collection
Mm.
anthology, and she hit me up and she said, I need the story like by tomorrow, because she knew I could write a story fast. And I
Yeah.
said, no problem. And so I had my fingers ready to go. And then like 3 seconds later, she sends me an email with a list of like 16 things that I can't do in my doll story, because she's tired of seeing that in doll stories. And that was like my first 16 ideas. So I had to go further afield to find something. And that is really productive, to go further, to not allow yourself to do the easy thing, I think.
Yeah. Had you and Ellen had a conversation about this anthology beforehand, or was that literally her first?
No.
Like,
Yeah,
so
well,
no.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was in
I-
Santa Fe. I was in Santa Fe doing a series of events with Percival Everett and Percival Everett and Gerald Brisner. Yeah, the three of us were doing like a series of talks, and so
mm.
I stayed in a hotel for 4 days, I think it was, and yeah, she writes me on a Thursday and she says, "Hey, I need a story." And I think this has been a long time ago, so my facts could be crooked, but I think someone had not turned their story in, and she had not initially asked me to be in the anthology, but someone had stood her up, and so she needed somebody to be a fill-in, and I was the fill-in. And she said, "You can do it if you can do it by tomorrow." And I was like, "No problem," So I wrote up Daniel's Theories of Dolls, I think it is, which is a blast. Well, that's my favorite way to do it. Is I love to get like a prompt or a theme or some sort of controlling
Mm.
principle or something, and have somebody say, "All right, you got 18 hours. Let's see what you can do." Because that's when I think we can, like, if you give me, and I've said this before, maybe to y'all, I don't know, like, put me in an airplane hangar, empty airplane hangar, and say, "Show us how you can dance," and I'm run all over and doing my stupid dance, and everybody's embarrassed. but do a little masking tape area of 4 feet by 4 feet, and tell me, stay in that box and do the best dance you
Mm.
can. Then my dance is going to be a lot better with those constraints. Give me too much
Yeah.
license, and I'll just go crazy. I'm like the UFO monster at the end of Nope. I just keep like transforming into different stupid shapes. But if
Right.
you can keep me
Right.
contained, if you can give me some like bumpers and bowling, that'll help me get to the end better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, Ellen Datlow is one of, if not the best, anthology editor. I was going to say in
Yeah,
horror, but we don't need that caveat. She is one of the
yeah,
best
that's true.
anthology editors.
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
so for a moment, I thought, hang on, are you confirming like Ellen's like method is like this kind of Datlow effect where you just like message someone. It's like, how bad do you want it? If you want to be in the Datlow anthology, you got 24 hours, and you just got people like John Langan, like, oh shit, it's happening again. But no,
oh, that'd
that's
be fun.
not
You know that
her regular
that'd be a
method, I guess.
no, no, I don't think so. I don't think so. That'd be a great like
I mean, I
yeah.
can confirm with her. We've got her coming on in a few weeks. It's like, so
That's great. That's great. Yeah, yeah, that's
Stephen
great.
told me about this. Can you confirm or deny? Is this your regular method?
That'd be a
Yeah. So,
great that'd be great for an anthology, to say a 24-hour anthology. We're gonna call these 18 writers and see what they can do in 24 hours. I think that'd be really cool. I'd like that.
yeah. Yeah.
Mm, mm.
Oh my goodness.
I was like 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago. I was getting on like two different planes to go somewhere. I forget where, and and I realized that I had three story deadlines that were all stacked up
Mm,
against like the next 3 days, and so um, over those two flights, I wrote three stories. And one of them got rejected because he said it was way too violent for this publication. So I wrote a different one that he accepted. But violence is always the first place I go in my stories. I mean, I love emotional truth, but I love to get there in a brutal way, if that makes sense. Which is what I did
mm,
in that story, which will probably come out somewhere eventually. Who knows? But I love it when I don't have time to stop and think before I write, because and to me, thinking is so unhelpful for writing, which is why I listen to music, because music occupies like the critical part of my mind, so that I can actually get
mm,
some work done. Because if you listen to your little stupid inner voice, it's always telling you
mm,
that's not good enough, or you're just stealing this from this person, or you can feel like all the critics and history and peers and readers. You can feel everybody watching you, and you feel everybody watching you. It's hard to move forward. Um,
mm.
if you can, like, I kind of like what Joe Lansdale says: pretend like everyone you know is dead when you write. And I think that's not
Mm.
I mean, Joe's got it down. Everything Joe says is gospel and true, pretty much, as near as I can tell. However, I was on a different plane, maybe a year or 2 years ago. I was sitting in the emergency row in the middle seat, and I pull up my laptop as soon as we can put our tray tables down, and I'm taking off writing some story. And the older gentleman beside me looks over at my screen, which always happens. People want to see what you're doing. And I'm like, so what? But he doesn't look away. He keeps looking closer and closer until his head is like 10 inches from my laptop screen. And what I found was I was making that story more and more violent to see if I could get a reaction from him, And so then the juice cart comes down. I put my computer away and drink my cranberry juice or whatever. And we talk a little bit, and he says, "You're a writer," and I'm a writer, yeah. And I tell him some stuff, and we have a little conversation. I think, well, now he knows the answers to his questions. We can enjoy our flight now. But as soon as I open my laptop again, his head sucks right back down there to my screen. And he watched me write that whole story, which was really, really weird, And I mean, it was good too, because I think I didn't go backwards as much. That's always a problem with writing, is you go backwards, and when you should be going forwards. But for some reason, I didn't want him to see any hesitation on my part, so I just kept barreling on.
Yeah. Yeah. What a weird
Mhm.
constraint as well, having someone peering over. So it's like, well, we got to keep going. We got to keep going. See, now he's got this
Yeah.
misconception. He's like, yeah, writers, they never go over a sentence again. Like they know what they're gonna write, and that is down. That is it. He was very
Yeah, he
confident.
might.
He's
He
Yeah.
might.
he's
Yeah.
telling his
Yeah.
grandson, you got to be perfect. You don't use that backspace. We're going to take it off the computer right now. You don't
Yeah.
even need a backspace.
Yeah.
Erasers,
Yeah.
no deleting. You keep moving forward. You keep moving forward.
Yes, exactly, man. That'd be a good name for that anthology. That 24-hour anthology was "Move Forward," and with a
Yeah.
big exclamation point.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
You mentioned two novels that you've yet to publish,
Mhm.
American Neanderthal and Texas is Burning. So,
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, I'm wondering how long did each of those take to write? And I mean, you've
Yeah.
said that tried to you've shown them to different publishers and they haven't shown
Yeah.
interest at this time.
Yeah.
What kind of do you do when that happens? I mean, are you thinking, well, you've got some in the pocket for perhaps later in your career, or is it like this
Mhm.
is done now? I mean, I know when we spoke
Mhm.
before, obviously moving to much bigger publishers rather than indies, there's kind of less
Mhm.
flexibility. It's like, no, you have to put
Mhm.
this book out. So
Mhm.
I don't
Mhm.
know, is that one for for another day if you were to have more kind of options to then put something with a trad Anna? I don't know, just
That's a I've thought about that, and I honestly don't have a
mm,
good answer. My what I'm doing now is just throwing them in a drawer, or they're at the
mm,
archive of all my papers, which is at the Southwest
mm,
Collection at the Texas Tech Library. Those manuscripts are there. They're also on my hard drive. But I don't have, if I probably could get both of those published nowadays,
mm,
but they also got rejected, and so I think that they were
yeah,
justly rejected. I don't think those editors were wrong. I think they were right. They could see that this book had issues, and so with American Neanderthal, I still want to write a book called American Neanderthal, but I think I want to build it completely differently this time. Um,
mm,
I'm not sure how yet. I've got a few different ideas. As for Texas is Burning, I think that novel is okay actually, and maybe somewhere down the road I'll go back in and do a ground up rewrite and figure out why it was getting rejected, and put it together in a way that is better for the book, anyways, or better for the reader. I do like it's a story set in Midland, Texas, where I kind of grew up, right during the oil boom back in 2011, something like that. American Neanderthal set in 2010. Maybe I just shouldn't write in 2010 and 2011. Maybe that's
yeah,
a bad time for me to try to set things. I don't
yeah,
know, but like I was a teenage slasher set in 1989 and it sold immediately. I don't know. And I guess Don't Fear the Reaper is set in 2019. Yeah, 2019, and Chainsaw was 2015. I don't know. I can't figure out when all my books are set. That's kind of a useless enterprise and useless exercise for me to do. But yeah, I don't like. I guess I don't plan on. I don't have any hard and fast plans or really hopes of publishing them, because when I write a book and it doesn't find traction, it doesn't get accepted, I don't think everyone's stupid. This is the best thing ever. This is the best thing since The Great Gatsby or Deliverance or The Bell Jar or whatever. I think, well, this is my first draft of my next novel, and what that means to me is whatever mistakes I made here, I'm not going to make it next time out. I'm going to do better next time, because I'm never afraid of running out of juice, running out of more words. I've always got more stories to tell. It's just, will I have enough years to tell them all? That's the only real question,
Right.
But so I'm never afraid of throwing a story or a novel away, because there's another one already trying to climb over the gate.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I just wanted to go back as well to you talking about when you set yourself rules before writing a
Mm-hmm.
story. And of course, I mean, writing sequels, they can be a difficult thing to get right, and
Yeah.
particularly
Yeah.
slasher sequels. I mean, if I think about the
Mm-hmm.
history of the slasher, the sequels either absolutely nail it or they kind of collapse. So, I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
what do's and don'ts did you lay out
Yeah.
for yourself before writing Reaper?
The big don't that I laid out for myself was like Halloween 2. Um, Jamie Lee Curtis is wearing that ridiculous wig, because she had her haircut for another role. So I told
Right.
myself, no wigs, no fake wigs. I think you can pull a wig off better on the page than you can the screen, but still, no wigs. I didn't do any wigs,
Yeah.
and also, but I'll tell you the truth, what I learned from Halloween 2, which I think Halloween 2 is fine. I know John Carpenter says he wrote it with every night a six pack, and he doesn't think anything of it, and it's stupid and all that stuff. I kind of like it. I like the kills in it, and I like just how it ups the violence game. But it also starts like the moment the previous one ends. And to me, that in a present tense narration like I'm using in Chainsaw and Reaper, that it messed things up. It made things move too slowly. And so what I learned from Halloween 2 was jump ahead by a lot of years, and that gives you a lot more like room to play with things. And so jumping ahead 4 years, I think, was probably the, like Philip K. Dick would call it, the disinhibiting symbol, or it's not a symbol, the disinhibiting action, I guess, or setup that allows the next thing to reveal itself. And so that was very key for me. And of course, I took Randy's advice from Scream 2. It's got to be the gorier, it's got to have a higher body count, and don't always assume the killer is dead. You know, and
Mm.
and what I love about slasher sequels, like Friday the 13th Part 2, I mean, a lot of people justly say that's the best pure slasher in the whole franchise, and it probably is. But what I love about it was that it shouldn't exist. That's why Cunningham and Savini wouldn't play in the second installment, because they said the first installment was complete. There's no story left to mine, but the market demanded it. So the studio had to come to some different people, basically, and say, we want you to sift through the ashes of this story and find a thread you can pull out that's going to be long enough to sustain another installment, and maybe start a franchise. I don't think they were thinking franchise. They were just thinking cash in on a sequel. And I love that in slashers when the sequel is not planned, when I can tell that they had to stick their arm so deep into those ashes that their whole up to the shoulder is black with ashes. I think that's great. Um, and with My Heart is a Chainsaw, I never planned on it being a trilogy. It didn't become a trilogy
Mm.
until after I had turned the final copy in. And my editor asked me, and my agent, they said, all right, what do you want to do next? And I said, I'm doing another Chainsaw book. And they said, what? And I said, yeah, it's a trilogy. And I didn't decide it until long after the fact.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean that since we've established that it won't be a two-book trilogy, the only way you can now subvert it is, when they ask what's the next one, it's like it's the fourth book in the trilogy. It's like, what do
Man.
you mean? It's like, what is ambiguous?
uh,
It's the fourth
oh,
book
that'd be
in the
great, wouldn't
trilogy.
it?
What don't you understand?
Oh, I should definitely do that. That'd be beautiful, man. I should try to smuggle a misprint into the first printing of the cover, and have that fourth number 4 in it. That'd be great, man.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
mm,
Well, I know that we're coming up to the time that we have together. Like,
mm, mm.
unbelievably already, we are closing in on that.
Yeah.
but we've
Yeah.
got a question from Robert Stahl via Patreon, and he says, Stephen, you're famous for writing famously fast. Do the ideas spill out of your brain and onto the paper like water, or do you ever get stuck for hours like the rest of us?
um, that's a good. I think they just like I have too many ideas, and it's I don't know how to get them all on the page. I just have to like kind of randomly pick this one or that one. And but you know, for years I kept spiral notebooks of all my little story premises and lines characters could say and titles and stuff. And I probably had 2 or 3 shelves, like 3 feet wide, of these little spiral notebooks, just cram packed with stuff. And when the library came to me and wanted to buy my papers, I said, "Yeah, take them. I don't care," because I never once opened them up and looked back at them because ideas are completely useless. I think. What's useful for me is a voice that opens up a world, and and when I can get that voice down right, then the novel tells itself, and I can write a novel in 4 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever. I can write a story in the afternoon. But yeah, sometimes I'll get a story assignment and it doesn't come naturally. The first line, and usually the reason it doesn't is because someone tells me we want a story from you, and that gives me like so much room to operate in. When somebody tells me we need a story from you about telephones and how they worked in 1987, then I'm like on it. 10 minutes later, I got a story. So I have little bitty constraints, but give me too much room to play, and I can have a hard time picking which story, which premise do I activate with a voice, basically. And I told you I had that story that got rejected because it was too brutal. That's a good example. It was for like a big magazine in Texas. I guess I can't say who yet, but and they said, all right, give us. They said all we want from you is a flash fiction. And so I sat down real quick and wrote a flash fiction, and it was terribly bloody and everything, and they rejected it. And then I had to write another one, and my only constraint was not violence. And so, of course, the
Right.
only thing I thought of for like 5 weeks were over the top violent stories. And it took me so long to think of a story in which only one person died, and they died way off screen, or off page. And it worked out really good. I like that story a lot. It's just 1,000, 1,100 words, something like that, but I like it a lot. It's not the kind of story I usually tell, um, and it's exciting. But it did take me a long time to think of a story without like a knife being crammed into somebody's left eye. You know.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And I mean, talking about brutality and violence, I mean, Chainsaw, despite the title, actually, for I don't know, the first 75% is quite
Mhm.
restrained. It's like it's
Yeah.
restrained
Yeah.
until it
Mhm.
fucking isn't, and there's
Right.
absolute chaos. Whereas,
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't Fear the Reaper, that's pretty brutal throughout, from the
Mhm.
Mhm.
start. So, I
Mhm.
mean, was
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
like a conscious decision, or is that just more this is how the story's built out?
It's more like to me a trilogy is really just a novel in 3 parts, and so book one
Mm,
is act one, book two is act two,
mm,
book three is act three, and therefore there's a lot of setup in book one, a lot of exposition, a lot of world building to get on the page, a lot of character introductions, and that to me that's why the first like 2/3 of Chainsaw doesn't move at the same clip that all of Don't Fear the Reaper does. That's one reason, because it's act one. But another reason that Don't Fear the Reaper gets to move at the frenetic headlong pace it does is the world was already built, the characters were already introduced, and so I could hit the ground running and drop bodies every few pages, like a slasher typically needs to do. And you talk about subverting expectations. I think it could be that a lot of readers coming to Don't Fear the Reaper are kind of expecting a redo of Chainsaw with like some the stakes upped or something like that, which hopefully it accomplishes that. I don't know, but the way I could subvert those expectations was to not give them something on the same scaffolding as Chainsaw, but
mm.
something on a completely different scaffolding, which was really fun to do. I liked it a whole lot.
Yeah, I think the only thing we can expect from you is something
Mhm.
unexpected, so whatever it is
Mhm.
you've done for book three,
Yeah,
I know that the scaffolding again will be completely different to the other
it
two.
is. Yeah,
So
it
yeah.
is. And
Um
and Act 3 is always where the blood is on the wall and just
Oh
pulling
yeah.
around your feet. And man, like Don't Fear the Reaper gets pretty tall as far as the violence and high action goes, but the third book
Mm.
ramps it like it's like that Spinal Tap. Like hopefully it goes to 11. That's my dream for it. You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Uh, you're teasing us. We want it now.
I've got my credit card ready.
You always do.
Mm-hmm.
It is the third in the trilogy due for release next year. Is that the plan?
I don't think I'm released to say yet, but
Okay.
what can I say? Can I say not no? Maybe if I say not no, I don't know.
I think
But
your
soon, yeah,
answer and
soon.
body language said it all. And you didn't violate the NDA. Don't worry about it. Nothing was said. I asked a question. Let's all calm down. Let's get the lawyers out the way.
Yeah, yeah, man.
Let's move on to Dark Mill South, which is not normally
Mhm.
what I do to make a conversation lighter, but how did he enter your life, and what
Yeah.
ingredients and inspirations resulted in this absolute beast of an antagonist?
He probably comes from three places. One is my respect for Kane Hodder's Jason Voorhees. The way he's like
Mm,
so just big and imposing, and his chest is always heaving because it's not easy to kill as many campers. All that kind of stuff. The second place is Lele Long Soldier's poem called 38 about those 38 Dakota men hanged in 1862, which I've read that poem so
mm,
many times. It's just beautiful. Third place is that
mm,
old Jerry Reed song, Amos Moses, in which there's a line in there where he says, Doc Millsap raised up a kid who could eat up his weight in groceries, something like. But Doc Millsap is the father of the title character, Amos Moses, and I don't know why. Like I don't know how a Millsap has a Moses, but it makes sense in the song. And I've my whole life I've misheard that as Dark Mill South, and so about 3 years ago, I was looking for the lyrics of that Jerry Reed song, Amos Moses, and so I typed in Dark Mill South Jerry Reed lyrics, and nothing kept coming up, and I couldn't figure out what was going on, and so finally I just took out Dark Mill South, and all the lyrics came up, and I read through them, and I realized he was saying Doc Millsap, not Dark Mill South, and but to me it's always Dark Mill South. He's been in my head for a very very long time, and he's big like Jason Voorhees, I think, and
yeah,
not much of a speaker. He doesn't have quips like Freddy or anything.
yeah,
He's not going to call you on
yeah.
the phone like Ghostface.
Yeah. And I know that you've spoken before about the fact that you wanted to do a Friday the 13th book. If I'm recalling
Yeah.
correctly, the inspiration for The Only Good Indians was that was
Hmm.
originally conceived as
Yeah.
basically Friday the 13th on the reservation, but
It was. Yeah.
there was
You're right.
some issues with the hockey mask. You couldn't you couldn't
I
do
couldn't.
that. So
I couldn't.
yeah,
Yeah. So I had to
but
had to come up with a different mask, which turned out to be an elk head. And I'll probably keep
yeah.
doing different variations on the hockey mask throughout my whole career because I would love to write a Jason Voorhees novel, but I doubt if I'll get permission. So I'll just keep doing different other kinds of slashers. But it's hard to come up with an
Yeah.
iconic mask. It's really tricky.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. And I mean, who would imagine that you would originally come up with a Friday the 13th novel that would ultimately win the Mark Twain American Voice in Literature Award?
Mm-hmm.
I know, man. Who would have thought that? That's insane. That blows me away. I never even
Yeah.
thought that I would be in the running. I never thought I'd be in the running for that even.
Yeah. And I mean, winning that award, how has it impacted you and your career? I mean, have you found that you've got people from, I guess, different circles then reaching out to you and having interest in your work?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Good Indians has gotten me all of that. And mostly, a lot of screenwriters get hold of me actually, and
Mm,
they ask me they ask me I'm looking to incorporate this Native American myth into my story. Can you guide me on how to do that respectfully? And my response is always, look, you're using the word myth. That's already disrespectful. I don't call Christianity a myth. So maybe you could not call a whole culture's religion you number
Yeah.
one, not assume that it's everyone has the same religion within that culture, but number two, let's not call it a cute little cartoon, and those are pretty easy to deal with, though. I also get called into a lot of projects, or I got invited to a lot of projects where people want to do fantasy versions of American Indian stuff, like give us
Right.
powers and all that. And I never do that either, because it's just like turning us into elves basically, and elves don't
Yeah.
exist. So America can pretend we're not there, and that's exactly what America wants. So I'm kind of fulfilling America's fantasy itself, and I don't do that. I really don't do hardly. I do hardly any of the projects I get invited to like that. But as for how that Mark Twain Award, or any of the other awards that Good Indians got has helped me. It probably has raised like my profile in the eyes of those people who buy stuff, which is fine and well, of course. That's what you want. But hopefully, my dream is that the audience comes to, not the audience, the world, I guess, comes to accept that um, horror is in conversation with the issues and anxieties of the day. We're not just this little nightmare carnival out here on the edge of things doing blood gags for each other to satisfy our sick impulses. There's that component for sure, but we're also trying to process through our own fears, paranoias, terrors, and I mean, maybe we're doing it for society, but in the first place, we're doing it for ourselves. For each of, like, I'm trying to figure out, like, Good Indians is about, should you in your 30s pay for the things you did in your 20s? And I'm asking myself that, am I still culpable for the things that I did that were wrong 20 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever? And I think those are good things to wrestle with. That I think they have the potential to make us better people, possibly, or to make the world better. But yeah, I mean, hopefully getting recognition from like literary establishments like that, and horror establishments as well, just cues people in that horror is not only for those weirdos over there; it's for the world.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, I mean, this idea of should you pay for what you did decades ago in the past
Mm-hmm.
is a
Mm-hmm.
really fascinating discussion and a nuanced one. And of course, one that we completely now don't have time for. But I mean, that is a whole other episode
Yeah.
right there. And I
Mhm.
Yeah.
mean, this time that we've had together has absolutely flown by. I think more than any, podcast we've done together. And
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
we're gonna have to get you back on,
Sure,
hopefully
man.
for the next release, which he didn't
Let's do
say
it.
when it would be. So
Mhm.
I
get the
didn't know. I
lawyers
didn't.
away.
No.
We have
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
idea, no
If
hints were
if I
given.
start if I start to say it, my publicist will appear at this green screen and like pull me back into it.
Yeah.
I'll be gone.
Well, maybe you should say it. That again is a
I know that would
that
be
would
like
be the
really.
ending. We've just incorporated video. That is the ending that we're looking for.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
I mean, like Homer Simpson, like sliding back into the
Yeah.
bushes. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly,
Exactly.
man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, do you have any final thoughts for our listeners?
Man, I guess I would say, yeah, Don't Fear the Reaper's coming out, but also on that same day, Marianne Enriquez's Our Share of Night is coming out, which looks to be a huge, wonderful,
Yeah.
good book. She's such a good writer, and
Yes.
I guess I guess Grady Hendrix just had How to Sell a Haunted House come out and debut on the New
Yeah.
York Times bestseller list, which is amazing for him and for horror. And let's see, I'm really excited for Scream 6 coming out here in a couple of months. Of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Some things never change, and you being excited for a Scream movie is one of those things in life. You got
Mhm.
Yeah,
Death,
yeah.
Taxes, and Stephen Graham Jones is pumped up for Scream.
Yeah.
You got it, man. You got it. Look, I've always got Scream stuff around. Does this even show? It's a little bee of Scream.
Oh,
Oh
Ghostface.
wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
right.
yeah.
Nice.
And I have it on my Kindle too. I've got Ghostface everywhere in my life. Oh, I guess my shirt, right? Yeah, look at this shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There it is. Okay, well, thank you so much for this, Stephen. This has been great.
It's always great talking to y'all. Thank y'all very much, and thank y'all for keeping this going so long. I think a lot of people depend on y'all. It feels like when you listen to y'all, it feels like you're hanging out with friends on the convention floor. It's great.
Thank you so much for listening to This Is Horror with Stephen Graham Jones. Join us again next time when we will be chatting with Chris Landon about his brand new film, We Have a Ghost, in addition to his other films such as Happy Death Day and Freaky. And if you want to listen to that ahead of the crowd, if you want to listen to every episode ahead of the crowd and to submit questions to each and every guest, then become our patron at patreon.com/This Is Horror. Not only do you get early bird access to every episode, but you can become a part of the Writers Forum on Discord. So head to patreon.com/This Is Horror and see if it's a good fit for you. Okay, before I wrap up, a quick advert break.
It was as if the video had unzipped my skin, slunk inside my tapered flesh, and become one with me.
From the creator of This Is Horror comes a new nightmare for the digital age, The Girl in the Video by Michael David Wilson. After a teacher receives a weirdly arousing video, his life descends into paranoia and obsession. More videos follow, each containing information no stranger could possibly know. But who's sending them, and what do they want? The answers may destroy everything and everyone he loves. The Girl in the Video is The Ring meets Fatal Attraction for the iPhone generation. Available now in paperback, ebook, and audio. From the host of This Is Horror podcast comes a dark thriller of obsession, paranoia, and voyeurism. After relocating to a small coastal town, Brian discovers a hole that gazes into his neighbor's bedroom. Every night she dances and he peeps. Same song, same time, same wild and mesmerizing dance. But soon Brian suspects he's not the only one watching, and she's not the only one being watched. They're watching is The Wicker Man meets Body Double with a splash of Suspiria. They're Watching by Michael David Wilson and Bob Pastorella is available from thisishorror.co.uk, Amazon, and wherever good books are sold.
Now, those of you who listened to the Jonathan Jans episode will no doubt remember that I said on that episode that I hadn't seen my daughter for over 18 months. And a few days ago would have marked not seeing my daughter for 20 months. But I can't say that because I have seen my daughter. I have now had a number of video calls with her, and last weekend I saw her for the first time in almost 20 months. We had a brilliant day together. We went to the zoo, we caught up, and it was just a magical moment. Obviously, having not seen each other for so long, I was a little bit, nervous as to how it would go and how would she react to seeing me. But as soon as she saw me, she ran over to me and I picked her up for a great hug, and it was just a beautiful, magical moment. We told each other we love each other, that we missed each other so much, and we don't ever want to go that long without seeing each other again. So, obviously, I've still got some personal things going on. This situation that I'm in has not been resolved. It is not over. But I think we might be getting there. I think we might be getting closer towards the light. And just what a fantastic memory for me to now to have created a new memory, and it just makes everything so much better. Before then, I couldn't even look at my daughter's things in the apartment because it was too painful, that memory that she's no longer with me. But now I can look at her toys, I can look at her clothes, I can look at her things again, and it's not so painful because I'm in contact with her. At the moment, I'm having video calls with her every week. There is a plan to see her again next month, so I just wanted to share that with you all. It is so wonderful and much more wonderful than my voice is conveying right now. I'm a little bit under the weather, so and I'm British. You know, what a brutal combination, being British and being under the weather. You probably can't tell, but I am very, very happy with that. You heard in the Jonathan Jans episode how painful it was for me to not be with my daughter. So it is a dream. It is a dream that I'm living. And I said before that I thought 2023 was going to be a good year for me personally and professionally. And what a way to kick things off. And I'll tell you this, as I've said before, I never take any moment for granted with her. I always act as if each moment I'm having could be my last, because one day it will be. And, 3 video calls and 1 in-person visit, and each time, if it's my last interaction with my daughter, then I know that it's been a good one. And I mean, that's the way to do it, I guess, in all relationships. Put everything into each interaction, each relationship, and walk away knowing that if that was the last time you saw that person, then it was a good experience. Well, that about does it for another episode of This Is Horror. I will see you next time with Chris Landon. But until then, take care of yourselves, be good to one another, read horror, keep on writing, and have a great, great day.
This is Horror Podcast.